to put gas in your car, and when you hear the little click that tells you that the tank is full and the handle snaps to disengage from the pump, you just press it down some more and keep on going. Do you let it overflow on the ground? Uh-oh. Watch all that hard-earned money go to waste, right? Okay. Okay, well, those of us that allow our emotions to take control of how much food and fuel we're putting into our bodies each day are doing pretty much this exact same thing. It's your individual emotional baggage that causes you to overfill your tank. Now, you've all heard the term emotional baggage. It's that proverbial suitcase that you lug around with you from situation to situation and life experience to life experience. It's got that negative connotation of being all the things about us that family, friends, and significant others are going to have to deal with for years and years to come. Now, if you've ever seen me pack for a trip, you would know that I struggle to pack lightly. So you can just imagine the number of emotional suitcases that I had by the time I was 33 years old. Believe it or not, that's like 2 of our baggage. I'd had about 5 serious relationships, and they had all ended really bad. I was in the middle of a failing marriage. I had a bag of dysfunctional family issues. I had a bag of mommy issues. I had a bag of childhood issues. And while I would love to tell you that I had a bag of regrets, more accurately, I had a bag of would-haves, I had a bag of should-haves, and I had a bag of could-haves. There was even this mystery bag full of all these hurts and pains and things that I didn't even know I hadn't dealt with yet. All of these things had me overfilling my tank on a regular basis and contributed to my weight problem. You're going to keep an eye on those emotional bags for me, because they're going to come. I know that we have a mixture of new folks and veterans here today. I'm just going to go over a few basic terms to make sure we're all on the same page. The best way to know how much physical fuel you should be giving your body every day is to know your base metabolic rate. Just about any fitness professional or doctor can help you establish a really close estimate of your base metabolic rate and a really good idea of how many calories you should be giving your body every day. I said calories. It's a dirty word. We all hate it. Nobody likes to count calories. A lot of times in weight loss, it can even start to feel like calories are the devil. Let's talk about what a calorie is for me. It's not food. It's a measurement. It's a unit of energy measurement. When you look at the nutritional label on food, it's telling you exactly how much energy you are giving your body by consuming it. Studies have shown that people who do keep track of the amount of fuel that they take in each day are 85% more likely to be successful at weight loss. And that base metabolic rate that I talked about, everybody's got one. It's a number measured in calories that tells you exactly how much energy your body is expending each day by just like strawberry or chocolate. But I got milk for 6 weeks. I could drink it 6 times a day. And I could drink as much of it as I wanted to at a time. But that was it, milk. Seriously, ask me if I want a glass of milk. Okay. So, as an emotional eater, I had a really big problem. I had to find another outlet for my emotions really fast, and it wasn't going to be through milk. Believe me, I tried. For some reason, a glass of milk doesn't quite cure depression the way a fistful of candy bars can. So, I decided that if my emotions were so powerful that they could drive me to food as a coping mechanism of dealing with them, they had to be powerful enough to give me that little push that you sometimes need to get a workout in. So luckily for me, I had already begun exercising. I had this little gym in the apartment complex that I was living in at the time, and I decided that anytime I experienced an emotional need for food, I was going to go to the gym and I was going to exercise. I'd put on music that matched the mood I was in, and off I'd go. Mad, get on the treadmill. Sad, get on the treadmill. Bored, get on the treadmill. Hurt, get on the treadmill. All right, see what I did there? Right? I found another way of dealing with my feelings. I replaced an unhealthy behavior. Instead of eating when I got emotional, I'd get on the treadmill and I'd walk. Easy to say, harder to do. We've all had issues implementing new behaviors and new habits, even the ones that are supposed to be good for us. But I had already decided that I wasn't going to let these emotions send me back to food. I had already picked a different mechanism of dealing with them. Fitness helped my emotional state for sure. But if I'm using my emotions to fuel my fitness, we all know that there's positive and negative emotion, right? I did not want to associate exercise with negativity all the time. Too much of that and I would end up right back where I started from. That's when I discovered the work of Merrill Littleberry. Those of you who have attended other weight loss conventions, you have probably heard Meryl speak too. I love me some vitamin M. The first time that I heard Meryl speak in 2012, she introduced me to her concept of life accounts and making deposits into these accounts so that we can withdraw from them as we need to. The 5 accounts that Meryl discussed back then were intellectual, spiritual, emotional, nutritional, and physical. Meryl's work has literally given me the foundations for the tips and tricks that I'm going to give you today on tapping into your emotional accounts and the concepts of emotional deposits and withdrawals. Now, I know that I'm switching over from an automotive metaphor to a financial one here, but would you be surprised if I told you that most people that have suffered from obesity handle finances better than they handle weight management? Yeah. Okay. You have a checking account. You have a savings account. Maybe a savings account, right? Okay. You know exactly how much money comes in each month, and you know exactly how much you need to take care of paying your rent, paying your utilities, handling all of your basic needs as far as food, clothing, transportation. Okay? So, I don't know about all of you, but I'm a Virgo. You should see the monthly budget spreadsheets that I've got. I think that's why Meryl's work resonated with me so much. I'm really good at handling finances. Actually, I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm really good at keeping track of finances. Spreadsheets are good. All right. So, when I looked at the accounts that Meryl talked about, I really felt like I had most of these accounts in balance. But when I looked at my emotional account, I realized that account was a hot mess. My emotional account did not reconcile at all, and I knew that I had some work to do. Almost instantly, I realized that I had not one but 2 emotional accounts. I had an emotional checking account and I had an emotional savings account. As I start to talk to you about these accounts today, I want you to think of the positive deposits going into these accounts as healthy emotions. Likewise, we're going to think of the negative deposits going into these accounts as unhealthy emotions. All right, let's talk about your emotional checking account first. My emotional checking account was the account that I was surviving on a daily basis. You make deposits into it as life happens to you, and you withdraw from it as you need to get through your day. If a lot of positive stuff is going on, and you got a lot of positivity going into that account, the chances are when you go to withdraw from it, you're going to withdraw that positivity, affecting the people that you come in contact with and making decisions based on those experiences. If you got a lot of negative stuff going on, you got a lot of negative stuff going in there, the chances are you're going to withdraw that negativity, affecting the people that you come in contact with and making decisions based on a completely different frame of mind. Anybody ever tell you to be positive when you've had a crappy week? Yeah. There you go. All right, my emotional savings account works a little bit differently. Just like a regular savings account, it's the stuff that's held in reserve, either for emergency situations, pleasure, long-range goals, and it just sits there collecting interest. Only for a lot of us, when we start our weight loss journey, our emotional savings account already has a really negative balance. And it's just sitting there, festering. Right? So, how did that happen? How did our emotional savings account get so full of all this negativity? Think about it like this. Every time you have a negative thought or a negative feeling, it goes into an emotional account. Maybe it went into the emotional checking account. Effectively, you may have just unknowingly made a deposit into the emotional savings account. And when our emotional savings account is already so far in the red, it makes it really hard to withdraw from it when we need to. We talked about interest. Let's think of interest as power over our thoughts and feelings, right? Well, all that negativity is just sitting there festering, so it's not like you're gaining interest, it's more like you're accruing late fees and overdraft charges. The interesting thing about starting to balance out your emotional accounts is that when you do, true transformation starts to happen. People ask me all the time where I found the motivation, inspiration, and determination to lose weight. I'll tell you right now, I found it in all the stuff that I was putting in that account. So what I want you to think about here is, how are we dealing with the emotional savings account? A lot of times, because emotions are involved, it's really easy, feelings are involved, so it's really easy for us to procrastinate and to forget about dealing with that emotional savings account because, let's face it, the consequences are not immediate. It makes sense if you think about it. lose track of your checking account and you will bounce a check, or the cell phone payment that you need to make won't go through. It's a little easier to procrastinate in dealing with your emotional savings account though, because a lot of times the stuff that we are stashing away in there is the really unhealthy stuff that we don't know how to or don't want to deal with yet. So when I started to balance out those emotional accounts, that's when really I started to experience transformation for the first time. I started to realize that I needed to look at all of that stuff that I had stashed away in my emotional savings account, and instead of looking at it as the stuff that I was going to carry around with me or lug around with me, I had to start looking at it as the stuff that I was going to use to get me to where I wanted to be. I had to use my emotions to spur change, and that meant going through my emotional baggage. Thank you for watching those bags for me. I told you that. All right, so that moment at the airport when all of the luggage that all of the passengers have loaded on the plane is spinning around the carousel and you have to find your bags and you have to claim them. I had to do that. I had to find all of the emotional baggage that was piling up on me and I had to claim it. But I also had to be willing to leave everybody else's bags behind. Meaning, I had to understand that the transformation I wanted wasn't going to come out of somebody else's baggage. I was not going to lose weight because somebody else wanted me to lose weight. I was not going to stop emotionally eating because a doctor told me that I needed to lose weight. The only way that I was going to stop feeding my feelings was if I started to recognize what my feelings actually were, as opposed to all of the feelings that other people tried to evoke in me. Now, this can be a pretty personal moment, because when you start going through some of those bags for the first time, you might just find that some of the stuff that you have stashed away in there is stuff that you are not ready for anybody else to see quite yet. Think of how quick you are to snag your bag back at the airport when somebody who has a bag that looks like yours grabs it by mistake. No, that's mine. Okay, because I don't know about you, but the last thing I want is for somebody else to get home with my baggage and start shifting through my unmentionables. TSA already did that for me on the way here. So now you've got all these bags, and it's time to start sorting through them. And I'm talking, open them up, spread them out, and start examining every single little piece. Now, if you do that all at once, it could start to seem a little emotionally overwhelming. Actually, it could probably start to seem a lot emotionally overwhelming. So, without the hidden things in there, right? So I decided that it was best if I started going through one bag first. This is usually the point where my clients ask me, Pandora, how do you know which bag to start sorting through? Here's what I tell them. When you hit baggage claim for the first time, look for the bag that you think is weighing you down the most. Go with your gut. Whatever you think that bag is, open it first. Let me give you an example. The first time that I started going through the process of doing this, I knew that I was looking for an alternative to feeding my feelings, and I was trying to find a way to fuel my fitness. So the first thing I had to ask myself is, what feelings typically drive me to food? They were usually the really unhealthy ones. I ate when I was sad because food made me feel better. I ate when I was lonely because food was a friend to me. I ate when I was scared or stressed out because food relaxed me, right? I ate when I was mad because food comforted me. So when I started looking at all of the emotional baggage that I had piled up, I asked myself, which one of these bags is filled with the most instances of anger, fear, sadness, loneliness? One of those bags stood out way more than others. So I decided I was going to pack that bag first. I told you earlier I was in the middle of a failing marriage. I felt guilty. I wondered what I had done wrong in the relationship. I was disappointed in how our relationship had turned out after 7 years of being together. I felt lonely. The relationship felt physically and emotionally vacant to me. And there was a lot of stuff that I was angry about and resented him for, and yet I was scared to death to leave. What if nobody else ever loved me? What if nobody else ever wanted me? What would I do without the benefit of being married and having his medical insurance to help take care of me? What would I do to support myself? I had a lot of stuff to figure out, and I had a lot of things to sort through. So I decided right then that I was going to leave all of the other emotional baggage on the carousel for later, and I was going to unpack the marriage issues bag to fuel my fitness first. When I first started doing this, I made a promise to myself. I promised myself that I would go for a walk for 30 minutes a day, and I would spend that time sorting through everything that was going on in the relationship and how I felt about it and figuring out what I wanted to do about it. When I first started doing this, I would go for that 30-minute walk, and I couldn't even walk a mile in that time. And at first, it really didn't seem like I was accomplishing any big feat. What I didn't realize yet, though, was that in keeping this promise to myself, I was developing a new and much healthier coping mechanism. As I started to do this, how I handled my emotions in the relationship started to improve. Sometimes I would find that there was something that I was hanging on to that I just really need to let go of. Sometimes I would find that there was something I needed to talk to him about. The time alone with myself gave me time to think about my feelings, formulate my thoughts, and when we sat down to have those conversations, I could express myself more clearly. The one thing that I can tell you without a doubt, though, is there was never a point in this whole process where, after going for that 30-minute walk, I thought, gee, I really wish I hadn't done that. It always added some form of positivity to my day. As I started to realize how much this 30 minutes a day was helping me, not only in my weight loss goals, but in how I was handling the everyday stresses that life was throwing at me, this 30 minutes became more and more important to me. I started scheduling 30 minutes a day of me time on an almost daily basis. Anybody can do this. Exercise is so easily a solitary activity. What I want to emphasize to you here, though, is that I was purposefully using this time to solve problems. I was trying really hard not to get distracted. I did not just choose to exercise. I was at the baggage claim. And I started to realize that being healthy up here and being healthy in here was leading to being healthy out here. Okay? Before I even realized what was happening, when life would throw me a new curveball and I had something new to deal with, I would use that 30 minutes to think about what was going on, figure it out, plan what my next move would be. That's your emotional checking account in action right there. I got better at the daily transactions going in and out of my emotional checking account without even realizing it. Then something else kind of interesting happened. I started to associate the physical things that I was feeling with the positive result of making me feel better. I had no idea if my results were typical. So I did some research. And I found science. So 2 researchers reasoned that people who were prone to anxiety might panic a little bit less. Wait, 2 researchers reasoned that people who were prone to anxiety would panic less when they experienced those fight or flight sensations when they had been exercising regularly. Your body produces some of the same physical responses, elevated heart rate, increased perspiration in response to exercise. Their conclusion was that exercise in many ways is like exposure treatment. People learn to associate the symptoms with safety instead of danger. Okay, this made perfect sense to me. If we can experience the symptoms of negative emotions without having to experience those negative emotions, then perhaps we get better at dealing with them once we have made a regular commitment to exercise. Now, I'm not saying that exercise became a magic fix-all for me, but it definitely allowed me to expend not just calories, but emotions as well. My emotional checking account was being handled. It was the emotional savings account that I still had a problem with. So now it's time to go back to the baggage claim. And the next suitcase was this huge, heavy, Samsonite hard shell, overflowing with fear. I was so overweight that I was afraid I was going to die. I had diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, and severe edema. I could not stand in the kitchen and cook a meal without experiencing foot pain or back pain. I was 33 years old, and I had decided that I was going to be dead before I saw it. So, unpacking all of that fear, I used it to motivate my fitness. And let me tell you, fear of dying will actually move you a little bit on the treadmill, okay? But I had a problem because I still felt weak. And I knew that as long as I felt physically weak, I was going to feel emotionally weak. I wanted to feel strong, but I knew I was going to need some help. So I hired a personal trainer. The first time that woman put me on a kickboxing bag, she changed my life. I wasn't on it for very long, maybe just a few minutes really. But as I started to hit that bag, I started to realize just how angry I was. I just kept hitting that bag, and I kept taking inventory of all of the things that I was angry about, and I found that every time I hit that bag, I could tap into a different instance of anger. I had a big old bag of anger waiting for me at the baggage claim, and I didn't even know it was mine. I was angry at my family for all of the things that had happened to me as a child under their watch. I was angry at my mom for a childhood filled with emotional and verbal abuse. I was angry at every boy who had ever broken my heart and didn't love me the way that I wanted him to. I was angry at teachers and coaches and counselors who didn't realize that I had a food addiction and didn't try to help me. I was angry at my biological father for not having contact with me. I was angry at myself for choosing food as a way of coping with my feelings. As I hit that bag, something very interesting happened. First of all, I felt stronger. Hitting that bag made me feel pretty damn strong. And secondly, when I stopped, I realized that some of the things that I was angry about, I didn't even care about anymore. Like, who cared about all those boys that didn't love me? They were not a part of my life. Why be mad at teachers and coaches and counselors that had forgotten about me a long time ago? What was the point of being angry at my biological father? That meant giving me up for adoption allowed me the opportunity to have the best dad in the world. This exercise was awesome. Not only had it helped me recognize all of these really unhealthy deposits that were stashed away in my emotional savings account, but it gave me a physical release so that by hitting weights and hitting bags and moving weights around and accomplishing new fitness goals, I actually felt like I had a physical release to let's go with some of this stuff. And for the first time, the stuff that I decided I was legitimately angry about, it didn't feel like I was just sitting there and taking it. I felt like I was finally fighting back. You know how you keep a ledger of your finances? I started keeping a ledger of everything that I was feeling by writing it down in a journal. Anytime an emotion surfaced during exercise, I would take inventory of it. Doing this allowed me to recognize a few things. First, by taking inventory of everything that I was feeling, I could really pick and choose which emotions I was going to give some power to, which ones I just needed to let go of and release back into the universe, and which ones I really needed to focus a little bit more on. I'm a big believer in journaling to affect personal change. Find yourself a blank book and empty your bags right there on the page. Doing this also made me realize that a lot of the things that I was feeling were within my control to change. I had the power to change them. They were as flimsy and two-dimensional as the piece of paper that I was writing them down on. Try it. It's your imagination that blows problems out of proportion to the point that they are unmanageable. Look at the tiny words on paper. That's something you can actually do something about. There's one last thing that I'm going to talk to you about today, and this might just be the most important. You cannot just withdraw the unhealthy stuff. You have to replace it with a healthy deposit. I was very lucky that I had tapped in, at this point, that I had tapped into how exercise and my emotions played together, because my entire world turned upside down. My father passed away, and for the first time in my life, I experienced a loss and a grief that was so emotionally overwhelming to me, it was nearly crippling. The night that my father was dying, the last night that he was in hospice, I sat in a house where literally the walls around me haunted me. All I wanted to do was run away. But I wondered, what would happen if I ran? Not emotionally, but physically. What if, instead of grabbing my bags and taking off, what if I grabbed my shoes and I went for a run? I had no idea if this was going to work. But exercise had already helped me deal with so many emotions in the last year. I thought maybe, just maybe, it could help get me through this. I will never forget that run. It was the 4th of July, and fireworks were going off in the sky overhead, and I had no idea how fast or how far I ran that night. I just let my emotions and my feet carry me. My entire world was shrinking. I was losing the only man that had ever unconditionally loved me. As I ran that night, I processed my feelings, and I went through my emotions, and when I got back, knowing that at most I had another day with my dad, I sat down beside his bed, sweaty from my run, and for the first time, I was able to set aside all of the negativity. The bad memories in that house were behind me. The ones that I was taking with me were the ones I chose to take. I would remember the playhouse that he had built for me in the backyard, and the time that he had taught me how to ride a bike in the driveway, and all those times that he had pushed me on a swing out back. I made a deal with my dad that night. I promised him that whenever I missed him too much, or whenever I felt like I needed his wisdom or his guidance, I would exercise and I would talk to him, and I would know that he was listening to me. I promised him that I was going to have the happy, healthy life that he wanted for me. And I thanked him for having the wisdom to come to me and help set me on a path to that life before he had to leave me. I thanked him for being my dad. I did two things that night without even realizing I had done them. First, I turned my usual response of emotionally running into a much healthier physical response. And in doing so, I had just started to balance out my emotional savings account. By going for that run and spending that time with myself, I had allowed myself time to process my feelings, and I was able to collect some really positive memories and some really positive experiences, even in this moment of immense grief and emotional turmoil. And they had just become the first healthy deposits into my emotional savings account. My dad had taught me one final lesson that night. He had taught me that I needed to make sure that I made more healthy deposits into those accounts than I did unhealthy. Now, when I run, I feel my dad's presence and it makes me feel great. There are days that literally I go for a run just because I know that in doing so, I'm going to connect with my Father. I'm able to take those positive memories and those positive experiences that I stashed away in my emotional savings account that night, and I am able to withdraw the interest from them and use them to motivate my fitness. It makes running one of my favorite things to do. There's times that I put on my shoes and I run just because I know that I'll think of how proud my dad would be of the happy, healthy life that I'm living today and everything that I've accomplished. Since that night, I have ran 28 half marathons and one full marathon. Thanks to that experience and the teachings of Merrill Littleberry, I am able to recognize all of the healthy deposits going in and out of my emotional accounts, all of those transactions on a daily basis. Merrill taught me to recognize the really healthy deposits with a big cha-ching. Every once in a while, one of you will come up to me and you will say something to me and I'll go cha-ching. That's just me stashing something away in my emotional account. I'm not crazy.
Yes, you are, just a little.
I believe that much like the concept of using food to fuel your body and keeping your weight loss teeter-totter in balance, that in order to get the results that you want out of using your emotions to fuel your fitness, you have to keep both of your emotional accounts in balance as well. Every time something positive happens in my day, I take that positivity and say it with me. That's right. I stash it away in an emotional account. If I'm having a rough day or a rough week and I need it to get me through, it goes in my emotional checking account so I can use it right then. If I don't need it right then, it goes in my emotional savings account. It gets stored as a surplus of positivity for a day that I do need it. Your emotions are some of the most powerful things that you have. And as a dear friend of mine recently reminded me, with great power comes great responsibility. I believe that in order for us to live happy, healthy lives, we have to practice responsible emotional accountability. That means making sure that we are making more deposits into our emotional accounts than we are withdrawals, that we're putting in more healthy emotions than we are unhealthy. It also means less baggage spinning around the baggage claim and more fuel for our fitness. I really think that these two concepts that I've shared with you today of physical balance and emotional balance are the two biggest tools I had to get the results and success that I wanted out of my weight loss journey. And I really hope that by sharing my experience with you today, I've given you some of the skills and knowledge that you might need to start applying in your journeys too.